The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in a cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised. You are now entering the all-consuming realm of Shay's Paranormal Chat, where the things that are better left unsaid are actually said.
Shut up and sit down.
You're listening to Shay's Paranormal Chat. Paranormal podcasting done Shay's way. Tons of fun.
Dude, seriously?
A bit sarcastic.
Hashtag investigator, not hunter.
But always real.
Hashtag data, not evidence.
Don't get your panties in a twist.
Oh my god, really?
This is real, raw conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Good evening, everybody. TGIF as always. I hope everybody out there is doing great. I am so looking forward to tonight's show, but I have a very quick announcement. I am by myself tonight, no co-host, so bear with me, and excuse me. So I will be in chat as much as possible as usual, but when I have no co-host, as you know, I focus on the guest. So let's kick things off here. Tonight we have an awesome guest for you, Robert and Lindsy Milne. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and I've been looking forward to this for several weeks.
Me
Good
too.
to see you. Good to meet you.
Yes, it is. So you are, among other things, you're a psychic intuitive counselor.
Isn't that like a fancy word for saying I do psychic readings? I tune into people. It's a fancy way to say it.
I was going to ask you what that meant.
I don't know. It just sounded pretty good.
It sounds pretty good.
I've been, whatever it is, I've been doing this for 56 years for my full-time career. And when I was about 15 and a half, I started working at a tea room in Toronto. And that's where I started doing readings. And I worked there as a child, and worked there for about 6 or 7 years. That's where I started.
That's pretty cool. Can you explain to people what a tea room is?
Oh, in Canada at the time, it was against the law to do psychic things. And you couldn't charge money or you would get arrested and you could get put in jail. So what they did in those days, they would have readers that would work at a tea house. In the tea house, they'd sell a cup of tea, sandwich, and cookies. And thrown in with your sandwich and tea, someone would read your tea leaves and do a card reading for you. And there was a sign on the wall that said all readings are done for entertainment purposes. So that's what a tea room was like in those days. And it was just a mask to be able to do psychic things.
Yeah.
That's what a tea room was. And when I was in my mid-teens, I was homeless, and I spent a fair amount of time on the streets, and the way I survived was by following my intuition, my psychic ability. That's how I survived. And I'd been aware that I was psychic or intuitive, or I saw things differently than other people did. And I noticed that even when I was a child, like 5 and 6 years old, I was picking things up from people around me. I often got into trouble for saying the things that I said, but I learned to be careful. But at around 9 years old, I also discovered quite dramatically that I saw things differently than others did, even when I was a child. And from that time onward, I knew that I was going to do what I do, tune into and psychically help people and do readings for them. And over the years, I've never really been all that concerned about what I've been called. There's a lot of things, and maybe some not so nice things. I haven't been all hung up with the title, although as this came in more and more into mainstream, people started, New Agers started putting different titles on it. So I was always happy being a reader or being a psychic, but the New Agers had to put fancy titles on it. So if they had fancy titles, I was going to have some too. That's pretty much like it.
56 years in the field, you deserve any title you want.
Oh yes, I think that's true. And what else though, Shay? In that time period, I have done more than 100,000 psychic connections.
Yes.
Over my lifetime. And when I applied at the tea room, because I heard that if you worked at the Cozy Tea Room in Toronto, if you worked there in the day shift, you personally would get a cup of tea and a sandwich and cookies, and then you'd get paid after your shift. And then if you worked in the evening, you actually got a hot meal.
Whoa.
Well, this was when I applied there. It was in January, and I'd been living on the street. So
yeah.
Meal was really special. So I had heard that if you worked at the Cozy Tea Room and then you worked in the evening, you would get the hot meal and cookies, and then you would get paid. And I applied there. I had never used a medium before, cards or palm. I survived by instinct and intuition. And I applied, and I did a reading for the owner of the place. I was only 15 and a half. And I had to do tea leaf readings. So I just picked a teacup up and looked at it and pretended I was looking at the globs in the bottom of the cup. And I just looked at her and talked about what I saw and what I sensed for her. And then I put the cards down. I had no idea what the numbers meant or the suits. But I just told an interesting story. But at the same time, I intertwined it with how I saw her psychically.
Right.
And on that day, I got hired. And I worked the afternoon shift, and I worked in the evening, and I worked in the night shift. And I had 2 meals that day. I got paid, and that night I had a warm place to sleep, and the next day I had a job to go to.
Wow, what a blessing.
And I worked there until I was about 21. And some weeks I worked 5 days, sometimes 6 days a week. And in that time period, on any given day, I could see 30, 35 people, sometimes 10. So it was at pretty much any amount, almost always lots of people throughout the day. And by the time I was in about 21, I'd done thousands of readings. And never actually using a medium, but pretending I did. And it became my purpose. And in a short amount of time, I became quite well known at the tea room. Or I was like, I was known as the long-haired, barefooted teenage hippie reader named Bob Milne. As I got older, just like being called an intuitive psychic, I became Robert Lindsay Milne as well. But that also was my real name. And I forgot what I said. So some weeks I would work 6 days a week, and then sometimes there would be an older guy that worked there, and he would get private parties, and he would take me along. So some weeks I would work 7 days a week, and I made it my life commitment. And when I was around 21, when I left the tea room, I decided that it was going to be, it was my calling, and it was what I was actually going to really do in my life. And at around that time, I heard that if when a young man becomes a priest, they make a vow that they'll say a mass every day of their life. So I decided that if I was going to be a lifelong psychic reader, intuitive, and that was going to be my life, I decided that I committed to doing at least one psychic reading or practice every day of my life. And from then, I made it through a little over 30 years without missing a day of practice. And after then I took a day off once because I just wanted to find out what it was like to not do it.
Did you ever learn how to read tea leaves or anything? No, I didn't think so, but...
I never ever learned to use a medium. Now I've got this beautiful crystal ball that sits on the table right beside me where I do a reading. I don't do crystal ball readings, but I have a crystal ball beside me. I don't do tarot, or I don't do card readings, but I've got a couple of tarot decks, and I've got some of the tools, but it's just kind of, I just have those little toys, but I don't use
where
them.
You're a psychic, you don't need, you keep saying medium, but so the listeners don't get confused. He's talking about, when he's using the word medium, he's talking about the tool.
I didn't say medium, ever.
No, like you're saying the tea leaves or the cards, you're talking tools.
Oh, that's the medium yes. Yes. Well, everybody needs a way of tuning in.
Correct.
And there are some people that have a medium, and the medium could be cards or tarot. It could be chironomy, palms, hands. It could be astrology. It could be numerology. Whatever it takes for that person to focus and get information. Now, you can study something like tarot or astrology, and you can learn the scientific part of it, and you can do really good readings. And then there are some people that will pick up a medium and just use it, and use it to bring out their intuitions or psychic ability, and may not necessarily have a lot of conscious knowledge about what they use. And then there are some people that would do both. Would use it as a tool to tune in, and also know what the book says as well. And then there are people that just don't do that at all. I'm one of those.
You just focus on the person's energy.
That's right. Well, I just I don't ask questions when I do readings. Well, I usually ask two. How old are you right now? What day's your next? What month's your next birthday? And that's pretty much the questions that I ask. If I ask any more, it usually requires a yes or no answer. And I ask people not to interrupt me as well. So I just sit down, turn on the recording, do an introduction. I say their name, my name, and the date, and then I just start doing the reading. And after about an hour, between 45 minutes and an hour, I do that monologue. And then I ask, say, well, if you have any questions, you can ask them now. And when I tune into somebody, I often see their life from conception to completion. I tend to see it that way. Now, I don't spend a lot of time at either end of their life, although sometimes I talk about things at either end. But mostly I talk about where they're at right now, what's going on, where they've been, and also where they're going. And it just comes off the top of my head.
That's pretty cool. That's for me, because I talk to so many, but I'm not, as we talked about, I am not psychic in the least. None whatsoever. I'm a very...
Speak to you about that. Are you open to being argued with about that?
Well, I have street smarts, I have some intuition, but psychic-wise, nothing.
See, that's the thing. Let me tell you what I was saying. Is that's the thing. When you start putting words, a description, on something that's instinctive, when you start to label it, you then start trying to do that. So there's being clairvoyant, there's being clairaudient, there's being clairsentient, there's being intuitive. And you can come up with a lot of words that's describing the same thing. So, I'm really good at telepathy, but I'm not so good at intuition. Well, really? Well, you're spending so much time trying to label what you're doing, you're not doing it. When I was around 17, 18 years old, I was doing experiments at a place called the Toronto Society for Psychical Research. And it was run by a Canadian financier. It was financed by a Canadian financier. And he hired Dr. George Owen, who was a professor of mathematics from Oxford University in England, and his wife to come to Canada to run the Toronto Society for Psychical Research and do research. And I participated in a lot of those experiments there. And there was this one night, the experiment, you couldn't do this experiment in today's age, but, and remember, I was just a kid, like 17 or something, and I was in this really fancy mansion, and with all these educated and really super intelligent, rich people, and I was like a street kid. Anyway, I was doing these experiments, and there was one fellow who was an assistant director or something. He was an obstetrician, and this is why you couldn't do it in today's day and age. He brought to the meeting about 12 blood spots on pieces of a blotter, and he had them numbered, and he had notes about they were blood spots from his patients,
Right.
and he had their records with him. And they gave me a blood spot to hold. So this is called psychometry, right? Psychometry. When you hold something in your hand and you feel the vibes from it. That's what psychometry is. That's what it's called, psychometric. So I would hold the blotter, the blood spot, and I would talk about. Now I had no idea that this guy was an obstetrician. I didn't even know he was a doctor. So I had no information, and I started talking about what I felt of the blood spots, and he was taking notes, and there were a lot of people watching. And when I finished, do I hear a dog in the background having fun?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Always.
Always? All right. So I would so I went through all the blood spots, and people were kind of impressed, but the doctor was blown away. And he read back the things that I had said, and then he compared it to what the his notes were. And I was pretty impressed, and so were a lot of the other people watching. And then the academics got in and started a debate. Well, Robert really wasn't being clairvoyant. Maybe Robert was only being telepathic. And this crap was going on in the group. And I got really mad at this one guy. And I went over and grabbed a blood spot, and I went to him and I said, "Here, let's find out if you can be just telepathic. Let's see it. Do it, buddy." And then I got so annoyed with them trying to identify with no knowledge. I got so mad I wouldn't do it anymore. And because when you are concentrating on, I am this but not that, you can't do anything. So when I teach people how to be psychic, first of all, what's being psychic? Well, being normal. Almost every living being, and for sure, almost every human has some type of instinct. For example, Have you ever been somewhere and you look up and you just notice that someone's been looking at you?
Yeah, I think almost everybody has.
Right. Well, that is the first stage of being psychic. You see, being psychic is not some extra special ability. It's the instinct that we as mammals have. We humans are mammals, right? And just about every mammal has those type of instincts. That's how we survived. That's how we made it out of the caves. That's how come we weren't dinosaur food.
That makes sense.
Okay, so it's our instinct. So just about everybody has it. So if we took the entire human population of the world and put them on a bell-shaped curve, there would be one person at one end that's absolutely zero in psychic awareness. They probably wouldn't have made it out of the caves if they were born dead. All right, so they got zero. And then there's somebody else at the other side of the bell-shaped curves that's absolutely 100%. And then everyone else fits in between. So that instinct. Have you ever been thinking about somebody you hadn't seen for a long time, and all of a sudden you hear from them? Or you start, have you ever been going through the grocery store and something jumps up at you like tomato soup, and you think, nah, I don't need any. Then you get home and you want to make something with tomato soup, and you open the cupboard, oh, there's nothing there. Like, does that ever happen?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Or you're just about to do something and you stop, and then a car zooms by you. And if you hadn't have listened to whatever it was telling you, you would have got run over. That happens to everybody.
Yep.
So being psychic is not being spiritual. Being psychic is just simply being aware of our base instincts that we all have. Some people call it street smarts.
Yeah.
Some people call it intuition. But what it is just simply being in tune with our instincts. So, what I would... Yes.
Sorry, can I ask a question? Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Please, interrupt me.
So, what I'm hearing, you think everybody can be psychic? Almost everybody. So, do you think there's different levels? And if so, do you think everybody can get to a higher level by learning how to...
Well, if you ask, can anybody get to a higher level, and you put any topic in there, my answer is going to be yes.
Right.
Can anybody be better at counting? Yep. Can anybody be... so we always can get to a better level no matter what. We always can get to be in a more aware level. So when I used to teach a class, a one-day workshop, and I did it for about 20 years. And I had as many as about 310 people in it, and as little as 10. And in that workshop, I would guarantee, absolutely, 100%, that if you sat in the workshop and you do what I show you, I guarantee that you'll be doing psychic readings for strangers before the end of the workshop. If not, I give you back your money.
Oh, wow.
And I guaranteed it. And the workshop would be about 8 hours, but I would have people looking across at a stranger, talking about that stranger and being psychic within 2 hours. And what I would say to people is become aware of what's obvious. Look at the person. So extrasensory perception, ESP, sounds like some, really special power. Well, ESP is simply the 5 senses that we already have: touch, taste, smell, see, hear, feel, whatever. I think I got them all. So it's those senses working together creates a 6th sense. And there's that sense of awareness. And I ask people, become aware of what's obvious about the person in front of you. Look at them. See how they are. When you become aware of what's obvious, then more becomes obvious. And then more becomes obvious again. Till eventually you're seeing, or I'm seeing, things that are obvious to me, but they're not obvious to anyone else.
Because you've trained yourself to be aware, to spot these.
It's obvious.
Yeah.
And so there would be times where, so I've been a performing psychic from, the mid 1970s all the way up to about 9 or 10 years ago. I just had enough of that. So I used to do radio and TV phone-in call shows, and once again, all I would ask of the client or the caller is, "What's your name? Tell me your first name and where you're calling from." And I'd say, "Thank you very much," and then I would just start talking. And I would just say whatever came into my mind. And most of the time what came into my mind was exactly what they were wondering or wanting to know about. I would always just talk about what seemed obvious to me. And the other thing that I also do when I was doing shows and when I do readings still, I listen to or watch the readings that I've done, and I'm paying attention to how I'm saying things, how I'm presenting things, making sure I'm fresh, making sure that I'm not falling into patterns, and I'm constantly checking that. So when I would be doing calls on the air, I would be saying something to a person, and at the time I would be thinking, "Robert, people out there listening, they're just going to say anybody could do what you're doing because it just seems so bloody obvious." And it seemed so obvious at the time. But when I would listen to the air checks, what I thought was obvious when I was tuned in, when I was listening to the air checks, it was not obvious at all. So become aware of what's obvious, then more becomes obvious, and then more becomes obvious again, and you train yourself. That's how you start.
No, I think you explained that very well.
Or not.
No. I
meant that's how you start.
Okay.
Way. Now that's how I learned it. That's how I teach it, and that's what I would call fundamentals.
I like the fact that you go back and listen and check, because you can't improve in anything in life. You can't improve if you don't go back and reassess what you've already done. Now,
at this point in my life, I was 15 and a half when I started doing readings, and I turned 72 in July. It's been my life, and it's something very comfortable for me. So it's important that I make sure, because at the 100,000 mark, I don't come across many things that I haven't seen before. Like, for example, how many times do you think in my career have I met somebody that has a broken heart or a bad relationship? Like, how many times do you think I've seen that?
Like 100 times a day?
Maybe, okay, so now I pay attention to how I say things, because what I'm saying to somebody, I may have seen 50,000 times or 10,000 times, and I have said the same thing to someone 10,000 times or more. What I have to remember is it might be 10,000 times for me,
not for
but
them.
It's first time for them. So I study, analyze how I'm saying things to make sure that what I say is fresh and alive and real, rather than something that I've said 1,000 times. So I study that. I make sure that I don't fall into patterns. I make sure that I don't, just between you and me, there's little tricks of the trade. There are things that you can say to somebody that they can't say no to, So, like when you get into trouble, you fall back in one of those. But that's keeping your client positive, keeping them focused. Now, I learned those tricks by, doing thousands of readings over my lifetime. Well, tricks, skills, another way to say it. So I make sure that I'm not using a lot of those easy hits. I do my best to stay away from them. And then I do my best to make sure that I'm changing how I'm saying things. Because if you ever go to get a reading, now, there's something that I call filler. When you're doing a reading, sometimes you're going from one subject to the other, or you need some time to think about something. And it doesn't matter if you're doing card readings or palm readings or foot readings or skull read. It doesn't matter what you're doing. That sometimes when you're switching from one subject to another, you need time to think about, or you need to think about a subject. A lot of people have what I call a filler. Well, everybody does, but they don't change it. So when you hear somebody say something to you and it sounds like they've said it 100 times before, that's filler. There's no energy in their words. And that's when you can tell when someone's just putting stuff in. So I pay attention to make sure that I'm not doing that very often. And I make sure that I'm saying things in ways that the person relates to. So I'm constantly studying what I do.
That's good. So you're putting a conscious effort in. We do have a question in the chat room.
What is that?
From Allison.
I'm so psychic. How come he doesn't know the question?
I love that. Yeah, that one never gets old, huh?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard that before.
Do you think?
So back to you were saying almost everybody can be psychic. She wants to know, for the ones that don't have it, why do you think they don't have it? Is there a reason?
Because they're not in touch with their inner self, their intuitions. It would be someone. It could be someone. Now I gotta really be careful. People are gonna get pissed at me. Let us think about someone who has autism. Let us think about somebody who may have Asperger's disorder. That's not a mental illness; it's a way of thinking. And they're not necessarily in touch with their instincts. They're quite analytical. And when you think of the movie The Rain Man, do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Dustin Hoffman, Tom Cruise.
Well,
yep.
Right. So the character that Dustin Hoffman played didn't have a lot of intuition or instincts and did not understand behavior. Did not understand interpersonal communications, was detached from that. There is somebody that wouldn't have that intuition.
I gotcha.
Okay, but not necessarily somebody that has Asperger's or autism are the only ones. But
you're just using that as an example.
As an example,
yeah.
And they do tend to see things from, instead of in abstract or creative, they'll tend to see things in logic, which is why Raymond got really confused. When he got stressed out, he would recite "Who's on first?" because he was trying the cartoon or the skit that Abbott So "Who's on first?" and he would recite it, trying to understand what that meant, and he couldn't because he couldn't think in abstract.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So someone who has who does not have the ability to think in concept or will not have the ability to be intuitive.
All right.
Okay. But I would guess if schooled in the right way, someone could get in touch with those survival instincts. No, I'm not going to say. I was going to say maybe one of the reasons why it's becoming more prolific as time gone on. In the olden days, they may not have been allowed to live. Those type of people, that they might not have survived out of childhood. I had that, which is what we sort of pretended and kind of joked about right at the beginning. I just realized that could have been one. But anyway, I don't want to go there. I could get into trouble for that. So a lot of psychics get killed, for the few that were witches got got burned at the stake.
Oh, yeah.
In the old days, the king always had a wise man, and the idea was, predict victories for the king. And if you predict a victory and the king's army lost, you got killed. There was only one answer to will we win.
Yeah.
Whether it was right or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Got another question? I have a question for you.
Okay.
My cousin, Lisa, is a police officer and as well as a very happily married family woman, has been seeing the number 911. And it's been repeating, and it isn't something that just sort of happened, but it's been going on for a while. And I'm wondering if anybody in the audience that's listening to us tonight has an idea of what that 911 would mean in for her if it keeps popping up. Do you have any ideas?
We talked about it a little bit, and I've been thinking about it a lot. If anybody that's listening in chat has any ideas what they think it means, be sure to put it in and let us know, and I'll read it. I only know very, very little about numerology.
Okay.
So if you're talking numerology, as we talked about, it's not a repeating number, so you can't look that up. But what if you added the 9 with the 1 and the 1? That would be 11.
And that's a master number.
Yeah, so I can't remember what it means, but that's the only thing, unless it's a symbol of something else in her life. But again, I'm not a psychic, but so I'm just like throwing ideas out there.
All right. Well, thank you for that input.
I don't know if it makes sense, but it's better than me saying I don't know.
Yeah, and I know there's somebody out there that's listening who's got some information to share with us too.
Yeah. I've even been trying to think who I know that is really good at numerology. If I can think of it, even if it's after the show, I'll get back to you.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
So,
what would you like me to talk about now? Point me. Yes.
Are you an author?
Not yet. However, I am mentioned in a book that's called The Perfect Predator. And
like 25 times, right?
Or 25, 26 times
yeah.
In this book. And the book is about a scientist who, by the way, is a client of mine and has been a client of mine for about 30 years. So her name is Stephanie Strathdee. She's written the book, so I'm not telling tales. And Stephanie came to me for her first reading. She had just completed her PhD in epidemiology. Today, Stephanie is a professor of epidemiology at the Southern California University. She is a professor and associate dean of the epidemiology department, and she's an internationally known researcher in AIDS, HIV. Her husband, Tom, is also a professor, and he's a professor of experimental psychology, as well as he has a PhD in psychiatry, and he is also a professor of psychology at Southern California University, and he's also an associate dean. Like, these people are like the intellectual heavyweights. By the way, Stephanie has a memory like Sheldon Cooper. So you know that guy Sheldon Cooper? She's a little more. Well, Sheldon's perhaps a little more tight-ass, but you know, Stephanie has a photogenic memory. It's incredible to be around her. So they had planned, now these people now are in their 50s, late 50s, and Tom is now in his mid-70s. They had this special dream vacation set up, and they went away on their vacation. Now, a year before, I had done a reading for Tom, and Tom is, the way I see Tom, he's like a modern-day, older Indiana Jones kind of guy. And he's about 6'5", and when he was younger, he was like really quite impressive man. And anyway, he had blown up to about over 300. And I did a reading for him the year before of their vacation, and I warned him about a stomach illness. And I was pretty direct with him. And I also told him that at a certain time, and it was about 2 years or 3 years into the future, I can't remember that detail, it was in the future, and I had told him that he was going to lose 100 pounds or more. And then I said, before that time, there is an illness that you will have, and it will be in and around your lower and vital organs. And you will be as sick as you possibly can be without dying. You will be that sick. However, you will not die, and you will lose 100 pounds. And then I said to him, Tom, I don't know if the illness is your destiny or losing the 100 pounds. Regardless of what happens, I am firm on the fact you're going to be 100 pounds lighter. So you can hear my words, and maybe my words will scare the hell out of you, and you'll look after your health, or you won't, and you'll go through it and get sick. And then I said, you can do it the easy way, or you can do it the hard way. It's up to you. It's up to you. So they go away on their vacation. It's the end of December, or end of November into December, and they're in Egypt, and they go through these pyramids. And when Tom goes through the pyramids, he gets really sick, but he admitted that he was sick before that. He gets so sick he can hardly get out of the pyramids. He passes out, and they bring him out. Then he ends up in the hospital in Egypt, and then he goes into a coma in Egypt, and then he catches the super virus. And the super virus is the one that is the most potent and powerful superbug on the planet. And that is 100% antibiotic resistant. And that means that if you get that, you die. Well, you used to die. And so I came on scene. They had been away on their vacation, although I knew stuff was going on with Tom and stuff. And then just before Christmas, or around that time, in December of that year, Stephanie contacted me on Skype. And in the book, it also says how it happened. She reached out to me, and I answered and said, I've been waiting for you. What took you so long? And that she wrote that in the book, by the way. And from that point onward, and I told her that Tom could live. And I told her that and this was, I had meetings with her every day during that time, and actually up to more than 8 months into the future. And in that time when Tom was in isolation, he got medevac to Germany, and he was in quarantine and lockdown. And he went into septic shock 7 different times when he was sick. I told Stephanie that she could find a cure, and again, it's in the book. And I told her how she could do it. And Stephanie went out and researched and contacted some of the greatest scientific minds on the planet. And while Tom was dying, she found a cure. And I was her guide. I also had a psychic link with Tom when he was in a coma. And I knew when he was okay. I knew when he was in trouble. I knew when his vital signs changed. And every day I would give Stephanie a report as to what was going on. And the next day she would recite back to me what I had already talked about. And it turned out that I was 3-4 days ahead I was so sensitive to Tom's energy that I would be 2 or 3 days ahead. I know I said 3 or 4, but it was really 2 or 3. I was 2 or 3 days ahead of what the doctors were saying was happening with Tom. I didn't use the medical terms. I didn't have that. I talked about it in my way. And there was one point, and this is one of the most significant things from the psychic point of view that happened with Tom. Early into his coma, when he was in Germany, I knew, as I said, I knew what was going on with him. I knew how he was. And I knew his energy. I visualized a candle, and I saw the candle, and when the flame was strong, I knew he was okay. And when this flame started to flicker, I knew he would be in trouble. And there was this one time the candle started to flicker. I mean, big time. And I was really afraid he was going to die. It was that serious. And I said to Steph, Tom was cold. He was alone. He did not know what was happening to him. He was in this unconscious state, but there was an awareness. He could hear people talking around him, and he could hear people saying that he had the superbug and that he was dying. And he was starting to let go. And I said to Stephanie, and again, this is in the book, and I said to Stephanie, Tom needs his girls with him. And I said, yesterday would have been a good day. Today is a good day. Tomorrow's not so good, and if you wait longer, don't bother. That night, now I was that direct, because it was life and death. That night, his girls arrived from California. And as soon as they came around him, all of a sudden, his vital signs started to change. When he sensed and felt, when he could hear their voices, he started to get strong again. And I watched the flame get stronger. And later on, in the way the book is written, there's the way the scientist Stephanie writes it, and then Tom writes about his dreams and his perceptions when he was in the coma. And what proved the biggest thing psychically was that it proved that people can hear when they're in a coma. It proved it because I called it, and then Tom verified it. And that was really significant. And in that book, it's written by 2 scientists.
Right.
And they give credence, not just to me, more importantly, to our field. It's received it. And that's one of the greatest things that I've been able to do is to bring that into the forelight, to be a part of it. There are a lot of people in the world that could have done what I did. My number just came up. It was just my turn for that one, and I was ready for it. But there were lots of others that could have done it just like me. I just was lucky. It just happened to be me. And the big thing is that the credibility for our field.
Right. That is amazing.
Yes. By the way, here's how Stephanie found a cure. She did research, was involved with scientists all over the globe, and she came to me one day and she said, okay, I've narrowed it down to 3. And by the way, the clock was ticking because, like I said, Tom was dying, like he was dying. The clock was ticking. And she said, I've narrowed it down to 3 things. And she says, I'm going to run them by you. Now, I have to also understand I'm not the star of the show. I'm not the star. There are a lot of other people that did more than me. If I hadn't been doing my job on 3 different occasions, Tom would have died. But that's not the star role, though. What Stephanie did was the star role. And a bunch of other scientists and a bunch of other people. So Stephanie presented to me, and they had to make a decision really soon, or Tom wasn't going to make it. And Stephanie said, okay, I've got 3 I'm ready to make a decision on. Let me tell you about them. And she says, now the first one is phages. And I said, that's the one. And she said, let me tell you about them. And I said, that's the one. And she said, okay, then let me tell you about the other two. And I said, it's phages. And she said, let me tell you about them. And I said, okay, tell me about them. And she told me about the other two. And then I said, phages. And she said, why? And I said, because they look like little Pac-Man. And what they're going to do is attack the superbug and kill it and eat it. That's what they're going to do. And she said, that's what they do. And on that, now she did all the scientific research, and the last one, she was running it by me. So I'm not the star. She just ran the last bit by me. And that what I said was, because it was like little Pac-Man, she made her decision. And by the way, do you know what phages are?
No.
Well, you get them from sewer water. And phages are raw sewage, excrement. It's excrement, and that's what they injected into Tom. However, they did other things with it. Shit, actually, it was like excrement. So there was research done in the 1930s, 20s and 30s in Russia, where people that had bowel and intestinal illnesses, they were injected with raw stool in the lower organs. And the concept was the healthy bacteria would attack and kill the unhealthy bacteria. That was the concept. And there was some success. And then into the late 30s, early 40s, then penicillin came along. And then people were given the option of having a pill or a turd. And, the pill won out.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I know. There's the odd weird one, but the pill won out in just about 99.9% of the time. So Tom was injected with phages as he was he was hours away from death. And he was the first human to be injected IV. And he'd been in a coma for a couple of months. And after and the doctors did not know if he was going to live or die when they injected him. They just did not know if it was going to kill him. And so the first dose, he survived, got a little bit stronger. A couple hours later, they gave him more and then more. And the next morning, when Stephanie was with Tom, after he'd had 3 or 4 injections of phages, he actually regained consciousness. He came out of his coma, opened his eyes, came out of the coma, recognized her, acknowledged her, and then fell asleep. Not a coma. He fell asleep.
Wow.
And he came back from the death. That's how it happened. In that book, I mentioned for my work, but like I said, there are so many other people, and my role, while I had a couple of moments where I needed to do my job, there were others that did far more than me.
Oh, that is amazing. We're about to run out of time.
Pardon?
We're about to run out of time, but I don't want to forget to tell you what Allison said about your cousin's 911 number.
Please say that. Yeah. What did Allison say? And thank you, Allison.
Check angel numbers. Like, is either a level up or something one-on-one, but check angel numbers.
Angel numbers?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can probably Google them.
Okay.
That's a shorter version of what she said.
Okay.
Thank you. So, kind of, that's probably what I meant, not numerology. I think I was thinking angel numbers too, but she put the right words in it. Either one.
Thank you.
So,
very, very much.
So we only have a couple minutes left before the show's up. If people want to find you, where can they find you? What's your social media?
My website is robertlindsymilne.com, and you can find me on Facebook, Robert Lindsay Milne. I'm just learning about Instagram now, so I'm RLM. I think it's RLM 1949, but Facebook and my website, Robert Lindsay Milne, and there's a lot of information there, and If you're interested, give me a call. I love doing readings.
Yeah.
I love talking to people.
Yeah, I enjoyed talking to you. This went by so quick.
It feels like we just started.
I know, it's already been an hour. Can you believe it?
Yeah, well.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It is. And I've noticed that you're a little more energetic since we've been talking too, and I'm glad.
Yeah, once I get on air, I kind of fake it a little better.
It does wake us up.
Yeah, it does.
You know.
So, and before we go, I have to put a personal message out there. I just want to say thank you to all my friends and listeners and family that were sending me love and prayers and wishing me well. I am doing better. I've been walking around since I think.
Why are they sending you all these good wishes besides your fabulous person? Why are you getting all that attention? Tell me.
Because I threw my back out.
Really? How did you do that?
Actually, it's an old injury, and I just happened to move wrong. It just happens to go in and out. It's horrible.
It really hurts. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
So I think if everybody focuses on you...
I think they really did, because within 12 hours, I mean, I don't want to say never. I rarely bitch about my personal stuff on Facebook. And I did. I was just like, please, for the love of God, please, somebody, if you know what I'm going through, just, say a prayer for me. And they did, so... But.
And that's because you've earned it. You deserve it. You're worthy of it. I think I was talking about love.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. So. It took me a long time to be able to say that, but I agree. I do. Yeah. I do agree with all that. So maybe next year you can come back. I'm all booked for the season and I'm off for the summer, but I would love to have you back next season. Season 4 is coming. Well,
I'd love to be on with you again, and you know how to find me.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right.
Definitely. So, all right, guys, thank you. I will be back next week. And like you just heard me say, I guess that was my official announcement. I have shows April and May, and then I'm off for the summer. I think I have a few pre-recorded in June, but I'm taking the summer off because I also deserve time off. So, good night, everybody. Don't forget to punch that like button and love each other. Good night, all.